Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. You're watching Alaska Weather with us on this April the 17th. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information around Alaska. No matter what part of Alaska you're watching from tonight, we have a forecast and information for you that'll help to keep you and your village and your family safe. We encourage you to check that out, whether you're calling on the Alaska Weather Information Line. That's the 1-800 number you see here, 472-0391. I should get that right by now. 472-0391. And of course, the webpage, weather.gov/Alaska. The really cool thing is, if you haven't tried this out lately, type in mobile, mobile.weather.gov, and put that on your smartphone. Save that as a favorite or a shortcut from your home screen there. And you can get back to that really quickly, and it works a lot better on a mobile device, especially if you're in a place that only has maybe 2G, 3G service or weak service. That'll load a lot less information, use a lot less of your bandwidth, and maybe save you money, not to mention just having it load faster and be right there at your fingertips. If you can't find what you're looking for, whether it's information about breakup, information about aviation forecasts, or just you want to know, tell us about the snow. We'd love to hear more about your snow in April. David.Snider@NOAA.gov is how you find me. If you say David, I'll pay attention a lot more. It'll sound a lot like my mom. Here's a look at what's going on across the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range. We have a winter weather advisory until 10 o'clock. The upper Koyukuk, including Bettles, is under an advisory until 6 o'clock tonight, so chances are your conditions are already improving there. Maybe another 1 to 2 inches of snow before it's all said and done. For southern areas across the Susitna Valley, the Kenai, the Anchorage Bowl, and into the Matanuska Valley, we've had a decent snowfall, a very kind of routine spring-like snow around here. And we are not looking at any advisories around our region at this point, but you certainly have seen accumulating snow. Just because it's snowing, though, doesn't mean it is a warning watch or an advisory. This is not coming down that hard and that fast in your area to warrant that just yet. But that doesn't mean that conditions aren't going to be slick. So be careful out there if you're on the road system, on the parks, on the Glen, or on the Sterling Highway for sure. Just make sure that you're taking your sweet time and getting where you need to be, and yeah, be careful out there, friends. It'll be all right. Let's take a look at what's going on breakup. No update today, but we do expect to have an update from the RFC as we get into tomorrow from our good friend Crane Johnson from the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center. Yesterday's update included some areas that are at least some to mostly open along the upper Tanana Valley there. Still not real sure about the headwaters. And certainly areas as you get into the upper Susitna Valley and the Matanuska Valley. And as you look even further west toward southwest, at least some open water there in the Kuskokwim. So the big changes over the last couple days, though, have been the addition of colder air coming down the west coast. And as I think you'll have Crane explain tomorrow, you'll hear him say that things have probably slowed down a little bit because of the additional colder weather out in the southwest. So instead of melting this out in rapid form, we're probably going to slow the process down just a little bit. That doesn't necessarily mean anything bad. It just means that the process may take a little longer to get all the ice out of the river. So we'll hear what he has to say. Make sure you're watching tomorrow, though, and we'll have that update from Crane. As we look at fire danger, good news with some of the cooler weather is we've also slowed the onset of fire weather across most of south central, southwest, and certainly southeastern Alaska and the interior. So there's some good news there, but no significant change from yesterday and no significant fire danger at this point. Let's take a look at the satellite picture, and as we go ahead in time, you'll notice a pretty beefy area of low pressure here across the central and eastern parts of the Gulf. Beefy is a very true and meteorological term, especially closer to dinner time. And you'll notice that surge of wet weather moving into the northern and eastern Gulf, bringing with it quite a bit of cloud cover. That's going to be some rain. And in fact, we're looking at least central and southern parts of southeast picking up 1.5 to 2 inches of rain out of this. Much needed moisture, especially for our friends there around Ketchikan and Annette, and some areas that are still lingering in drought conditions in southeast. Who'd have thunk? Across the interior, a lot of moisture moving northward there, and in this steady stream that's been passing over south central, the Kenai Peninsula, and the Matanuska and Susitna Borough, and into The Alaska Range, a lot of snow coming out of that. Very wet, very spring-like, very southeast type snow. Our friends in Southeast are laughing at everybody in South Central today going, yeah, how do you like that? It's a very Prince William Sound kind of snow for sure. So sloshy, wet, sloppy conditions around South Central, but it'll probably be gone in a couple days. But this overall weather pattern is not going anywhere either, so kind of get used to this type of weather, at least for the rest of the week. Up north, you can see that moisture is making it into the Brooks Range here, and as it does so, and up into the Koyukuk Valley, that's also creating snow. That lift running into the higher terrain, wringing out and creating the moisture and those snowflakes. Up across the north slope, blowing snow, in fact, and more snow falling as a result of that colder air meeting up with moist air coming in across the interior and coming down the west coast. Cold, dry, northerly winds, some snow showers in there, but by and large, things are just mainly cold. As you look at the weather map, we have low pressure here at about 1,000 millibars moving through Northway and Eagle. On the east side, it's warm. Southeast, it's rain. Low pressure here across the Gulf at 980. This is a more powerful area of low pressure. The coldest air is still off to the west. As this is moving to southeast, the winds are coming up tonight already in the Canadian waters. Storm force winds there. We'll take a look at that map in just a few minutes. Out across the west, areas of light snow. Some of that starting to taper off for our northern villages here around Bettles and up toward Arctic Village. Southwest, some areas of light snow there. Low pressure sitting out across the Pribilof, snow there, and clouds covering up the Aleutians. As we get into tonight, low pressure is going to combine, kind of organize here across the northern Gulf, dropping to about 986 millibars. The coldest air will be moving through the central and western Gulf. A lot of that is kind of bypassing South Central. It's cold enough to snow, in fact, but the coldest air is moving around from the south and into southeast, helping to energize this area of low pressure here. And that combines with the jet stream and the layers that you'll see here in the aviation forecast at 9 and 3,000 feet. You can see how this low pressure system is oriented. At least at 3,000 feet, it certainly has a little more support right over the low here, which certainly helps. Out across southeast, periods of rain will continue there. It's going to be kind of a soggy 24 hours for sure, but again, much needed rain as we go. Northerly winds coming down the west coast, probably blowing and drifting. A little bit of snow across the ice in the Bering Strait up north. Watch for areas of snow there around St. Lawrence Island, and things kind of dry up a little bit until you get out toward Wainwright at Utqiagvik and parts of the Beaufort Seacoast where the snow should be a little bit more prevalent as these troughs of low pressure are rotating around. Another little surge of cooler air here across the Aleutians and moving into the Gulf, and as we get into Thursday, that combines, and again, focusing some showery weather across parts of southeast. Low pressure systems here kind of disorganizing a little bit. We've got another area of low pressure right here around Northway, and then another focus of that right around Prince William Sound. That's going to keep rain and snow moving around south central Alaska from Thursday and into Friday. Showery weather across southeast. Maybe some warmer air working its way into the middle and upper Yukon Valley, so lowlands into the Tanana Valley as well. Could be looking at rainfall, while surrounding highlands probably still dealing with snow showers there. And as we get into Friday, you can see how low pressure is still lurking in the area. That overall big low pressure system of the Gulf is gone, but we still have areas of showers across southeast, rain and snow across northern parts of the Gulf, snow showers around south central, including the Kenai Peninsula, all the way up into Anchorage, the Matanuska and Susitna Valleys, and then rain showers still lurking across the central and eastern parts of the Tanana Valley and the Yukon Valley, while the west is still dealing with snow showers across the west coast. Blowing snow, in fact, will still be an issue. And here's our high, trying to settle the winds down for the Aleutian chain. Adak, Atka, even the Pribilof is really not dealing with a whole lot of wind right now. All the focus for unsettled weather is really going to be across the mainland and southeast. Notice there's another low trying to sneak in from the southern end of your weather picture. Temperature-wise in southeast, 30s and 40s there. South central hovering at or even just below that freezing point, so it is going to be cold. Upper 20s, lower 30s for the upper Tanana Valley. Looks like temps around Fort Yukon, closer to the 20s, 10 around Arctic Village, and anywhere from 5 below to 5 above, even 10 above there in Kaktovik there for the North Slope. Cool weather, 18 in Nome, 20s for Southwest, including Bethel at 20 degrees, low to mid 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, 35 in Dutch Harbor on Alaska, 26 in St. Paul, 33 for a high on Thursday. Mid to upper 40s, in fact, some places closer to 50 around Haines and Skagway. Temps in the mid-40s around South Central, 39 in Homer tomorrow, 49 for Eagle, 45 in Fairbanks. Single-digit temps for most of the North Slope, Kaktovik closer closer to 16. West and southwestern temperatures in the 20s and 30s. Nome to 23. Gamble and Savunga about 20. Mid to upper 30s for Dillingham, King Salmon, Kodiak 44. Overnight low temperatures back below freezing north of the Alaska Range, south and west, teens and 20s, 21 for Fort Yukon, 0 for Utqiagvik, 10 in Kotzebue, and temps in the 30s for most of southeast for Friday morning.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to aviation weather now, a widespread area of MVFR is expected from Norton Sound all the way into the Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay, and westward into the Bering Sea and most of the chain in the Alaska Peninsula, especially the Bering Sea coast side. You'll find a swath of VFR conditions in the morning from the mid-Yukon Valley all the way down toward Lake Iliamna and just west, pretty close to Bethel, but not quite, kind of stopping in some of the higher terrain there. You'll find some breaks in the MVFR around the Copper River Valley, up into the Susitna Valley, but over the Matanuska Valley, southward into the Kenai, Prince William Sound, and eastward all the way into southeastern Alaska. You should expect widespread MVFR there with IFR conditions pretty close to Hyder and north, but mainly along the higher terrain, not so much on the inside passage. North of the Brooks Range and the North Slope all the way from west of Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse and east of AKwx to Kaktovik, IFR conditions will start your day there. That's going to fill in and drop southward just a little bit more as we get into Thursday afternoon. Also watch for areas of IFR setting up generally west and north of Tanana and Fairbanks, and also around some of the north slopes of the Alaska Range, so fairly close to Denali. South of that, MVFR continues for most of the Anchorage area, especially along the hillside. And look for areas of IFR developing across some of the higher terrain for southeast. MVFR really for just about everywhere else. The west coast, still looking at MVFR from Kotzebue Sound to Norton Sound all the way into Bristol Bay. IFR conditions from Nunivak Island and Makoriak to the north coast of the Alaska Peninsula and westward through the Pribilofs and the Aleutians, still holding on to MVFR. That starts to get chipped away by some drier air and high pressure coming in across the western Bering Sea. You can see some impacts there improving around the Bering Strait into the Kotzebue Sound region by Friday morning. IFR lingering around the North Slope at Kasuk, Utqiagvik, all the way down toward Wainwright. And then IFR continues across some of the western Alaska Range passes through the northern Gulf Coast and into southeast. Southeast primarily dealing with MVFR conditions, and you'll see some improvement around the southern Kenai Peninsula, northern end of Kodiak Island. That fills back in by Friday afternoon. IFR fills back in across the western part of the Alaska Range. We're still looking at hit and miss VFR conditions around Cook Inlet and the Copper River Valley, and also north through Mentasta Pass, and then marginal conditions there across the North Slope with IFR and the Chukchi Coast, and MVFR continuing for many of our favorite places along the Bering Sea coast for southwest and the chain. Your pass conditions tomorrow, Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass, we expect to see IFR lingering there. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass holding at marginal levels throughout the day. Rainy Pass probably goes back over toward IFR. Windy Pass, we expect to see marginal levels throughout your day, and about the same there for Isabel Pass throughout your Thursday. Mentasta Pass also expecting to see marginal levels throughout most of your Thursday. No big changes for Teneda Pass there either. Marginal levels for you and for Portage Pass, and if you're traveling through Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see a lean over toward IFR conditions as the day goes on. Now, warmer air is going to slip just south of the Haida Gwaii region, and some of that's trying to work its way northward with low pressure here across the central Gulf that's pulling all of this northward. But the surface freezing line on the western side of the state is starting to nudge southward again as colder air is moving in. No big changes or level changes to be aware of really across most of the mainland. We do have just a very small area of warmer air just east of the Alcam. Icing potential is going to be kind of high up there for most of the southern third of the region, but it is dropping from where we have been the last couple of days. So below 10,000 feet across the west coast to above 2,000 feet around the Bristol Bay region here. So again, a large kind of column of air here across the west coast that will be capable of supporting at least some icing. And the same is true for the North Slope, below 11,000 feet there, but then you get south of the Brooks Range and you're talking about high level moisture and higher levels of cold before you get cold enough to make that ice. 6,000 to 8,000 feet there and above 6,000 feet for a large part of southeast. Again, isolated moderate possible there. Here's the jet stream, the trough of low pressure taking over Alaska now. All of this has been shifting eastward, so we have high pressure now in our west and to our east, and the main trough is now right over Alaska. That puts us in a much more unsettled phase for more parts of Alaska, especially south central, southeast, and the eastern interior with cold coming in on the west. You can see the low at 9,000 feet centered up fairly close to Cape Newenham, a west and southwesterly flow crossing the Gulf, pushing moisture into southeastern Alaska, an east and northeasterly flow for the North Slope and northerlies down the west coast, with a very weak ridge right now across the central chain and high pressure pushing that northerly flow across the western part of the Bering. A little bit of a shift in 3,000 feet. That low is a little bit closer to the northern Gulf and Prince William Sound. We still have our westerly flow for the Gulf. We still have a general east and northeasterly flow for the northern interior, and northerlies coming down the west coast, 25 to 30 knots. Turbulence-wise that puts considerable moderate over a large part of southeast tomorrow. Below 4,000 feet, isolated moderate a little bit further west toward Prince William Sound. And look for some bumps around the western part of the Brooks Range and the Bering Strait. Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining me once again is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Eric, welcome back to the program.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
And once again, you brought some wonderful satellite pictures to show us and do a little show and tell about. It's just amazing. I can get lost in satellite pictures all day. What did you bring today?
Right. Well, weather satellites, what are they good for? Yeah. Of course, there's the pretty pictures that they bring us. You know, we've got a picture here from April of 2012. Okay. The Sumi NPP satellite, it's what they call a polar orbiter, which means it covers Alaska because we're near the pole. Beautiful image. You can see a storm off of southeast Alaska, the sea ice along the Bering Sea up into the Arctic. A really nice picture, and this is important because it allows a forecaster to see where the storms are, where the ice is, where the clear areas are. You need to know where the weather is now if you're going to forecast it into the future. Exactly. So satellites give us these good pictures. This is called surveillance of the weather. And you know, that same satellite also has another picture from a little more recently, August of 2014, Tropical Storm Iselle bearing down on the Hawaiian Islands. Okay. Hawaii doesn't get hit by a whole lot of tropical storms or hurricanes. Sometimes it does. And here's a picture from the same satellite, the Sumi NPP Polar Orbiter. It shows Tropical Storm Iselle approaching the Hawaiian Islands from the southeast. You can see the storm swirling away there, and then there's the Hawaiian Islands. This is a tropical storm, not quite as strong as a hurricane because we don't see the eye wall in there. This is still a serious weather system. And all of this information comes just from that satellite picture. It's so much information, and it's wonderful to look at. You see the beauty and the awe of nature right there depicted in that weather satellite. We call it a polar orbiter because the satellite flies high over the globe. Maybe we could look here at we happen to bring the planet Earth with us. This is our satellite. A polar orbit flies really close to the Earth, maybe 800 kilometers over the Earth, and goes up over the pole and then back down, and then the Earth spins under the satellite as it goes by. That's in contrast to the geostationary birds, which are much further out. And they don't view Alaska quite as well. So we love those polar orbiter satellites here in Alaska.
So when we're a lot closer, we get much better details and imagery and an idea of a better maybe position of what's going on when it's passing right over Alaska or right over Hawaii.
Yes, exactly right. The polar orbiter gives such a good view of places like Alaska. And because it's close to the planet, there's another aspect of satellites in the polar orbit that is helpful for weather forecasting. It's an aspect that's maybe not as immediately obvious as the pretty pictures that we see. And that is the capacity for the satellite to produce what's called a sounding. That is finding the vertical profile of temperature and moisture in the atmosphere. We've all heard of weather balloons. Weather balloons are launched here in Alaska twice a day at a number of airports, everywhere from Barrow to St. Paul Island to Kodiak, Anchorage and Fairbanks, Yakutat, a number of places. Launch these balloons, and we've got a picture of a balloon being launched at an airport, and the balloon goes up. It's pulling a little package, an instrument package with it that reports temperature, pressure, humidity data back, and we use that information to help feed what are called numerical weather prediction models.
The models.
The models, right. It's a mouthful, so we just call it the models. And these computer simulations, these models are computer programs that simulate the motion of the atmosphere. Well, how does a model know what the future will be like? You have to tell the model what things are like now. And you give it all kinds of information, including information from these satellite sounders. Very important. Just how important are they? We have a comparatively recent study that really brings home, and this is Superstorm Sandy. We have a track image here of the track of Hurricane Sandy. Was down in the Caribbean around Cuba, and then it moved north over the ocean, offshore of the eastern seaboard, and then at the last minute, Sandy made what's called the left hook. It turned hard to the left and slammed into New Jersey. Was a major problem for the mid-Atlantic states, a calamity. It fused with another weather system and became known, this is not an official title, but Superstorm Sandy. It was quite the weather event. Well, the modelers, after the event, there's a group of modelers in Europe. They have a very good model, a frustratingly good model if you're the Americans trying to pursue their excellence. They reran their model afterwards in what's called a data denial study, where they kept everything the same. So this is 6 months after Sandy, but they went back, they reran the same model, they fed the model the same initial conditions, that is telling the model, okay, here's where we think Sandy is, down near Cuba in the Caribbean. Everything was the same as it was in the real forecast, except they didn't let the model know.
No satellite data.
No satellite data. So we're going to put that over here, no satellite data for you. The resulting forecast 5 days out, back when the real Sandy was happening and the model had the satellite data, the forecast was pretty good. We've got a graphic here on the left side. We show the forecast of where Sandy would be, and that's the red bullseye on the left. It's just south of where it actually wound up hitting. Not a bad forecast from this computer simulation, 120 hours out. On the right, you see the same model, but it didn't have the satellite data to help it understand things. And the storm is way offshore. It misses. The forecast is more accurate when the model has the satellite data. So that's the idea today we want to convey, is weather satellites. They're important because they show us the pictures of where storms are. We see good examples of this. Yeah, the surveillance right now, it's great to look at those pictures. And in addition, behind the scenes, maybe not immediately obvious, but the models have to have that satellite data for them to be good forecasts. And then a meteorologist uses that information to help everyone with the forecast of where the storms will be in the future.
That is fascinating information that we can look at, see where things have been, because you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. That's that old adage there. But seeing that satellites are actually helping us move forward in the weather information system is pretty amazing stuff.
You bet.
And if you want to check out Eric's satellite images that he's been talking about, whether that's something from today or last week or even much further back in Alaska history, you can easily do that yourself. Go to www.gina.alaska.edu and you can find those images there. Eric, thanks so much for joining us once again. And again, we will join you hopefully again soon for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, where you'll tell us more really cool information about the satellites over our heads in Alaska. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And back with your marine weather now, starting with the sea ice edge. You can always find this at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice. A little bit of new ice may be forming across the western end of Norton Sound with that north and easterly wind blowing in colder air. It is cold enough to refreeze some of that fairly quickly. Any of the larger areas of high concentration ice will also be moving to the west and southwest as northeasterly winds are moving off the continent. Look for the high concentration ice to stay intact. We might see a few places open up across the outer coast there of the Chukchi Sea thanks to that wind, but by and large it looks like there may be some areas just minimal new ice forming out across the northern parts of the Bering and the outer coast of Norton Sound. Let's take a look down south, a little bit different here. This is the Environment Canada warnings here. We have storm warnings around Haida Gwaii. That's what you're looking at right here. Here's southeastern Alaska, Ketchikan and Annette, Craig, Klawock, of course. Storm warnings posted just south and into the Dixon entrance, so you need to know that if you're heading even further southward. Gale warnings expected there and continue. Across southeast for Thursday, southerlies fairly strong in the inside passage, gust of 40 knots with a 5-foot sea. South of that, we have a storm warning tonight for southern outer coast areas there, including Craig. Southwesterlies to 40 knots, 20-foot seas there further north. Winds not quite as strong, the south and southwesterly flow, but seas anywhere from 16 to 21 feet for Thursday. You can see improvements there on Friday. Westerlies coming onshore at 20 knots with seas anywhere from 11 to about 13 feet. On the inside, gust of 45 in the northern Lynn Canal, 6-foot seas there on a 30-knot sustained wind. Considerably less wind from Stevens Passage into Clarence Strait. Look for southerlies, actually northwesterlies in Clarence Strait, 15 knots, 3-foot seas there. Southerlies in Stevens Passage, again, 15 knots and 3-foot seas. For South Central and Prince William Sound, especially northwesterlies should be light, 2-foot seas, 10-knot winds, and south and westerlies coming up Cook Inlet, 10 knots to 25 knots, the strongest of which over the Barrens with 7 to 8-foot seas there on Thursday. By Friday, the winds really start to pick up across central and northern parts of Cook Inlet, 20 to 25 there. You're looking at 5 to 6-foot seas, and southwesterlies coming up the northwestern parts of the Gulf, anywhere from about 8 to 10-foot seas there on a 25-knot wind, and winds come up sharply in Prince William Sound, again in response to low pressure, a southeasterly flow, 20 knots and 4-foot seas there on Friday. For southwest, in Bristol Bay, westerlies onshore at 15 knots with a 3-foot sea. North and westerlies crossing the Alaska Peninsula, 5 to 6 foot seas expected there. Westerlies across Shelikof Strait, 20 knots, 5 foot seas, 6 to 7 foot seas south of AKwx and Kodiak there at 20 to 25. As we look into Friday, you'll notice winds diminish just a little bit. Northwesterlies around 15 knots, 4 to 6 foot seas. And across Kodiak Island and Bristol Bay, you're talking about 20 to 25 with 5 to 7 foot seas, 8 foot seas east of Kodiak and AKwx there as we get into Friday afternoon. Winds are going to be pretty light across the Aleutians by comparison, of course, 15 to 25 knots. Certainly will still get your attention there if you're blowing into it. Anywhere from 7 to 8 foot seas, you're looking at about 5 to 6 foot seas across the central and eastern chain there for Thursday, all coming out of the north and all cool. A north and westerly flow continues for the central and western chain on Friday. Northerlies a little lighter around Nikolsky to Unalaska, 15 to 20 there. You're looking at 6 to 7 foot seas. 4 foot seas south of Unalaska to Nikolsky, so a little bit of a lull here south of the eastern Aleutian chain. For the west coast, northerlies continue here as well, 15 to 30 knots, the strongest of which will be in the lee of St. Lawrence Island, and 20 to 25 around Nunivak Island through Eatolan Strait, St. Paul, St. George up to St. Matthew, 20 to 25 there, and 7 to 8 foot seas. As you get into Friday, do expect winds to hold on from the north and northwest, 20 to 25 in most areas, seas ranging from 5 to about 7 feet, 3 foot seas on the outer edge of Norton Sound, 15 knots there from the north, and again, of course, that is in ice-free waters. As you look in the Beaufort Sea coast, north and northeasterlies at 20 knots, the Chukchi coast anywhere from 20 to 30, all over the ice there, so watch for blowing snow. North and easterlies coming across the Beaufort and the Chukchi on Friday, all holding at about 20 knots as we go through the end of your week. Northerlies through the Bering Strait continue with 5 foot seas in open water. Let's take a look at the maps one more time. Low pressure is organized and going strong across northern Gulf tonight. Watch for rain to fill in across southeast. If you don't have it yet, you will. Looks like another inch or two certainly possible across the region in total there, so it looks like it'll certainly add to some much needed moisture needed in the southern parts of the Panhandle especially. Rain and snow showers continue for south central as we go through tonight and tomorrow. And winter weather advisories for the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range from places like Arctic Village west toward Bettles. That'll continue through tonight. Watch for areas of snow showers continuing tomorrow and Friday. Rain showers for parts of the interior, rain and snow for south central, and more rain for southeast. Look for an unsettled weather pattern to continue into the weekend.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.